Hello, everyone, and happy Friday. This is Steph Lee, the founder of Host Agency Reviews. You have landed on the Friday 15, where every Friday at 12 p.m. Central Time, we answer the industry questions that you have been kind enough to submit. So today we have a lovely co-host on here. We have Lindsay Taylor-Lauer with Travel Leaders 365. Hello, Lindsay.
Hello.
I'm really sad because you all missed our conversation before this, where we were talking about dogs. We had a long conversation about dogs. I told her about how I have an imaginary podcast for my dog called Mornings with Fen Fen. It even has a theme song we sing that goes with it. So it's a shame that wasn't recorded. That's all I have to say.
Probably for the best.
Yeah, actually, that's probably true. So let's see. If you have questions that you would like to submit for the Friday 15, you can go to hostagencyreviews.com/Friday15. You can also get e-reminders there, which will send you an email with the questions that we will be going over for the week, as well as any co-hosts that we have. So one of the things is, if you attended Host Week, you might recognize Lindsay because she did a Host Week presentation. So I want to also link to that in the resources, because the presentation is great and it is how to make your clients crave the travel that you sell. We'll link to that as a resource. And if you haven't checked out Host Week in general, there's, let's see, it was like 5 hours a day times, it was like 25 or 30 hours of content for you, educational content. So make sure to check that out. We'll put a link to Host Week in the comments as well. So let's see, a couple things before we get started and get into the questions. First is our survey has launched. It is now in its second week. If you haven't heard about it or taken it, you can go to hostagencyreviews.com/survey. You're asking why in the world would I want to take your survey? Well, that is where we get all the great information that we're able to give you. Things like how many advisors are charging fees, what they're charging for, how much they're charging for, how much income they make, how much income over time they're getting. All of the things that you found helpful on HAR are because people like you take this survey. And we have an added incentive for people this year for our survey. So in the past, we have always offered the survey for free for everyone in the industry. I cannot tell you how many, literally hundreds of hours it takes our team. It was a 65-page report, and we did 2 of them last year. I cannot tell you how long it takes our team. So this year, anyone that takes a survey will be able to get access to the report for free. So that is an added incentive for you. It takes, depending on how you answer questions, there's a lot of conditional logic. It can take anywhere from about 2 minutes to, I'd say, about 7 minutes to take it. So it is not a huge time suck. Will save you money because you can get access to all this amazing data just by sharing yours. So let's see. Let's jump into our questions here, Lindsay. So first one is from Anonymous. They say, help. My sister and I started a travel agency together, and we thought we could both earn commission under the same EIN. An EIN, for those that don't know, is the employer identification number. Sometimes it's called the FEIN, the Federal Employer Identification Number. So they continue on. If we have one agency, XYZ Travel, and we are both selling, how do we form this business so one of us doesn't have the burden of all the taxes? Lindsay, what would you recommend?
So my first thing that I would always say to anybody is you should talk to an attorney, because I'm not one, or a CPA. So that said, not an attorney, not a CPA. I play one on TV. You should probably create an LLC, would be my non-professional, non-licensed judgment call. If you create an LLC, then you have your business, then the business is paying the taxes. You would then pay yourselves from the LLC's bank account. The EIN could be applied to an individual. So it depends on how you file. If you're a sole proprietor and that's how you got I could go get an EIN right now under my own name if I wanted to. So the EIN by itself isn't necessarily what you need to be looking at. It needs to be how you're organized legally for tax purposes is going to be what that is. So I generally recommend, again, not professional advice, just word of mouth. The LLC would probably be the best way for you to go to achieve that.
And this is funny because you said the first thing you thought of. I thought you were going to say, "Oh, cute! How fun to start a agency with your sister," because that's what I thought.
Right to liability.
I was like, "Oh my God, it would be so fun if I started one with my sister. We wouldn't be very good at it, but we would have a lot of fun." But let's see, the one thing I would say to this anonymous too is you definitely want to do a partnership, because it sounds like you signed up with just one of you. And so it's all going, the tax burden is going onto one of you. So whether you do like a partnership where it's kind of the sole proprietor partnership or the LLC partnership, I would definitely do that. But the other thing I would add to layer on top of what Lindsay is saying is not only do you want to talk to your attorney and your CPA just to make sure you're getting the right tax structure, but anytime you are entering into a partnership with someone that has to do with business, like let's say you're going to own a house together or something along those lines, you always want to make sure that you're working with an attorney on that partnership so that you're really clear. Just my parents, I know, had gone into business with multiple friends through the years, and it did not turn out well. There was misunderstandings on how much time people were being like we're going to be committing versus how much money they were going to be able to pull out of the business. And those are things that an attorney should be able to help you out with and have you think about so that the expectations for everybody is the exact same. I don't know if you've heard, Lindsay, but even beyond my parents' experience, I've had friends and family that have gone into business with friends and family where it didn't end well because there was misaligned communications on what to expect. It can still happen even if you have a good partnership agreement, but it can also help raise things that you should be talking about before you go into business together.
Division of resources, who's going to pay for marketing, how do you carve all that out and stuff like
Yeah.
that. That's really important to think about.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to put 2 links in here for people. One is the travel industry attorney list that we have. Now, for a partnership, you don't necessarily need to work with a travel industry specific attorney. It might be helpful because they're going to be familiar with more things that face travel agencies versus regular companies. But we'll link to that. And we'll also link to an article we have on travel agency business structures, which we'll talk about the difference between an LLC, a sole proprietor, the partnerships, and how those kind of come into play. So let's see. Question 2. Hi, amazing Steph. I like this person. Hi, amazing Steph and the HAR team. So quick question. If you're a host who has, let's say, a 15% commission tier with X supplier, and then you leave your host to become an independent travel agent, would you have to start out at the lowest commission level with that supplier, or would your previous sales while you were with your host be what gauges the commission level you start out with that supplier? Hope that made sense. Definitely does. Thanks for all you do. I've learned so much. I absolutely love all the information. Keep it coming. Lots of hugs and happiness. Tina, I love the way you write. You're just after my heart here. So, Lindsay, what's been your experience with that and advisors?
So it really depends. It is kind of the second proposal. What she said, it does. What in my experience, it does depend on your volume with the supplier. Now that said, if you are a prolific booker with one particular supplier outside of your host agency, sometimes some host agencies that I know have one advisor who does all of the volume for a single supplier. So in that case, if you're that advisor to your host agency, the supplier is probably going to be able to match the commission rate that they're able to provide you. But generally speaking, if you're not that advisor, and sometimes it's difficult for us to kind of gauge what the actual value is of our own volume versus the host as a whole. I think sometimes it's surprising what those thresholds are. Sometimes they're very high, which is kind of the benefit of having a host, right? Is you're able to kind of pool all that volume together. You have a very large footprint. And then from there, you're able to really benefit from those enhanced commissions, the top tier, all that stuff. So it really just depends on the supplier. It depends on what your actual volume is. And if, it's money is money, right? And so as individual producers, to any one advisor, 500,000 a year is a really good amount, but to, a gigantic company, that's a drop in the bucket. So it really just kind of depends on what your sales are, generally speaking, and your relationship with the supplier.
Yeah, and I would definitely say it would like the sales weighs heavier because I've known people that have left host agencies, gone on their own, and they worked with the vendor because they sold a lot of them, and they were able to get, like, let's say they should have technically qualified for like the lowest rate, but they talked with the vendor and maybe they like negotiated that they were going to get 13% commission. But the supplier is going to be watching that. And if you're not hitting a sales threshold by that 6 months, they're not going to keep extending that 13%. They're going to drop you down. But Lindsay, I'm going to also put in, for those that aren't as familiar with kind of the commission tiers, we don't have the tiers per se. Like every consortium is going to have negotiated the commission tiers specific for their agencies under their umbrella. So it might be like you need to, if you have between 50 and 100 passengers, if you're working with cruises, that you're going to be at 10%, and then it goes up from there. Or it might be like if you have up to 250,000 in sales with the supplier, you're going to get 11%, and 250 to half a million is going to be 12%. And so I don't know if ICs have access to that to be able to see the consortium tiers or not. But you could always check in with your sales rep as well if you were curious about it. But you would have to have a significant amount of sales to be at that 15% level, the high commission.
When you're looking at, My Luck Stars program or Four Seasons Preferred or anything, those are kind of those additional programs that layer on top of the enhanced commissions that are very much out of reach should you leave your host agency for those relationships. So if that's something that's important, it's very difficult for an individual independent advisor to meet those requirements to hit those preferred partnerships as well. Is another
thing. Yep. Great thinking there. So we'll link to our article that kind of goes over travel agent commissions and shows the ranges of commissions. But again, we won't have the tiers on there since those vary by consortium. All right. Last question here. This one, from Anonymous again. So I just joined a host agency, but I'm still trying to figure out who to ask and what's appropriate to ask for help with. So I went to make my very first booking for a client for an all-inclusive. Congratulations. I tried all the suppliers on Vax to make sure that I was getting the best possible deal. The client found it, quote, on sale with United Vacations. I got a quote from United, but it didn't have the big discount the client found by booking direct. Is there anything I can do? The client booked it with a free cancellation policy and said they'd be willing to cancel and rebook with me if I can get that price. I'm really bummed and feeling completely discouraged. Sad face. And it actually, that was my sad face, but there actually was a sad face on the email as well. So, Lindsay, do you have good news for us on this? I'm not on the front line, so.
I have news. I don't know if it's good news. It's encouraging news, perhaps. So first of all, congrats on, it sounds like you're just starting out in the industry, and that's exciting. I love it when advisors start breaking into this because it's cool. When you first start in the industry, it's really hard to position yourself as a professional. And frequently a trap that new advisors fall into is that trap of, I need the cheapest, right? Can you get me a deal here? Hey, can you get me the cheapest flight here? Unfortunately, that's not a successful way to run your business, right? We're not nonprofits. Theoretically, we're not nonprofits. I guess there are some models that could be, but we're not here to do bottom of the barrel. It's very hard to compete with the internet, particularly when you're dealing with gigantic companies like United Vacations. Something that Steph and I were kind of talking about before the call is just how all these different companies have very different targets and goals. And sometimes, so in a case like United, they don't necessarily care about commission. They care more about fulfillment. So if they have someone who books directly through them, they're not having to pay an advisor commission. They can go ahead and mark that down so that they're paying net pretty much outside of a small margin. So it is difficult to match or beat what the internet's doing. In that case, so the hopeful news is, you might not be able to salvage that particular kind of booking. However.
So, okay, just to clarify really quickly, with United Vacations, though, it's not as if every time you go to United's going to be undercutting advisors. It's just if they, for some reason, are motivated to move this certain product.
It would depend. I'd say anytime you're up against Expedia or United Vacations or Delta Vacations or American Vacation or any of the consumer available sites, it's a challenge to convert that to your own. Costco is another one that clients,
Costco,
I get this. Okay. It's incredibly difficult. Now, things that you can do if that's the only business that you can source, which is a thing, right? That's fine. Respect that. I respect it. At that point, okay, well, let me tell you what I can do that they won't. Right? If the pandemic taught us anything, it's that we need to be able to rely on our suppliers to advocate for us and intervene, all this stuff. Now, as an advisor, those are difficult companies to work with on your client's behalf. However, at least you could offer your client that as a reason why they should book with you over going with the company directly. in the case of like Costco, we can't really match those prices. The volume there, again, the volume discussion, right? How you get better pricing because of the volume. It is difficult to make that work. Sometimes it works out well, right? There's a reason VAX exists. There's a reason advisors have logins to these accounts. It's because there are times, and it happens frequently, that it's commensurate, right? It's equal. And then there are times that you get undercut and your client's looking, who knows where else they're looking also is the other side of it. And so if you've got a client who's solely motivated by price, that is very difficult business to convert. If my recommendation to advisors new to the industry, if somebody approaches you, hey, oh, I heard you're selling travel. Now what do you do? Can you get me a deal? My response, my advice is always, I can't necessarily do the cheapest, but I can do the best. And a great clarifying question is, what do you expect to get out of working with me? And if they say, I expect to get the absolute cheapest pricing, that's a pretty clear indication to you that the internet's probably going to be your competitor. And that's a really difficult competitor to have. If their answer is, I want someone to help guide me, I want someone to be on the phone if something goes wrong, I want an advocate, I need someone to help give me advice, that's someone that would benefit from working with you, even if it's slightly more expensive than what you're finding online or wherever these other sites are that they're looking. Something else that I would encourage advisors to do on the topic of fees, I always think my staff advisors, I always encourage my independent advisors, the very first thing you should do when you engage a client is charge them a trip planning fee. Some advisors like to pay that back to the client in the form of like a ready to go fee or whatever. There are different kind of ways to term it. I'm not a fan of that because I don't believe that we should work for free. However, if that's what you need to do to convert that business, to confirm it, you should do that. But I believe that the advisor should retain that as their professional services are being engaged. But that's also a really great way to kind of weed out those shoppers, is they're committed to you at least minimally $50, $75 is going to weed out the people who are only in it for the absolute bottom line. And the ones who do need your support, they'd see the value of paying you that additional fee. So that's kind of another way to avoid that. It can be really disheartening when you're just starting, and that's hard, but it's you can overcome it. And just I would encourage any advisor who's in that place to really analyze, okay, what is it that this client wants from me? Can I fulfill it? And then put your eggs in that basket if the answer is yes. And if it's not, then they're probably better off just booking themselves.
Mm-hmm. And one other thing to mention on this is sometimes they do have companies will have price matches where you can do a price match and submit all this information. Something to keep in mind. Other things to keep in mind about that price match is, one, it's going to be at a lower commission tier. They're not going to be paying you that 15, 16%. Typically, I think it's usually around the 10% commission level. So you're making less, you're having to do more. So again, that's kind of another, if that's your business model, just keeping that in mind, that you're going to be doing more work for less money. And how do you make that into a business model that works for you? And I'm going to also share our hosted advisor report really quickly, because this has some information. Again, this is the reports we publish as a result of the survey. So I just want to point out, because let me make this a little bit smaller. All right, so we have a whole fee section, which will go over kind of, Lindsay talked about those plan to go fees where they pay you $50 and then you apply it to the booking amount. So the first thing I'll do is like, if we go into here, we can look at 28% of hosted advisors charged a consultation fee. Most people did a flat fee. And then you can look at $200 was the median flat fee. Let's see. And then 99% of people opted for a one-time flat fee. So it's not more than one. But it talks about like the per person, the hourly trends. And then for the plan to go, of the people that charged a consultation fee, 75% applied the full fee to the booking. But there's other options too. Like some people do a certain dollar amount towards the booking. Some people do a certain percentage towards the booking. But this is one of the huge values in taking, again, the survey for this, because it gives us this information that is so helpful for advisors for keeping on top of, especially if you need some data to make you feel a little bit more comfortable about charging fees, or if you kind of just see where you fall in the range of things, whether it be fee or income or niche, things along those lines. But I'll just say also that last year's report, we really hit I think, a huge stepping stone in that it was 49%, but I'm just going to round it to 50. So 50% of hosted advisors charged a fee, some type of fee. So it can be consultation or a service fee or both. But that's the first time in the last 6 or 7 years that we've ran the survey that over half of advisors, hosted advisors particularly, were charging fees, which is really cool. And I think it's kind of a trend we'll see continue, especially after the pandemic. So many advisors. So for those of you that are new, it's definitely something to really consider, because for those of us that lived through the pandemic, you know that when all your commissions get taken away, that means you're left with nothing. And so there's a huge incentive for advisors to be charging these fees for some kind of compensation for their time when things go wrong.
We have such a weird relationship with getting what we are owed in our industry for some reason.
Mhm.
Advisors are fiduciaries, as attorneys, as CPAs, as doctors. I don't expect to ever even breathe a word to my attorney without knowing I'm going to get an invoice in a couple weeks. And it's just accepted. And once we get to the point in our industry where that's a common thing, we deserve it. We are professionals like all those other professionals. And even when you're new to the industry, you still have value that you're providing to your client. You don't have to prove your worth to them. You already have your worth in the fact that you are their advisor. You're helping them. You're putting together all that. So there's no justification that's really required. They're using you for a service, and you should be expected to be paid as one. So.
Yeah, that's perfect. Well, let's see. So, Lindsay, we're going to wrap things up. Thank you so much for coming on, and I'm happy to announce that Lindsay is going to be back, and she's going to be back on May 26th. So, in about a month, she'll be back for another fun round. Maybe we'll be doing some singing with dogs. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Yeah, Lindsay, if anyone has any questions they want to follow up with you, or just get in contact or learn more about Travel Leaders 365, what's the best way for them to reach out?
My email is llauer, LLAUER at travelleaders365.com.
Okay, cool. And then we're also we're going to link to Travel Leaders 365's review or profile and host agency reviews as well, in case people are interested in learning a little bit more about the company. Quick announcement. So coming up next week, we have OAL Network as our co-host. And then the following week, May 12th, we have Uniglobe as our sponsor, which means I will be going solo that week. A little bit scary, but we can do it. And then for our final call to action, everyone, just remember, if you like the Friday 15, you can go ahead and submit questions. You can sign up for e-reminders as well as text alerts by going to hostagencyreviews.com/Friday15. And then we will see you all next Friday at 12 p.m. Central Time. Thanks so much for joining us, Lindsay.
Thanks, Steph.